this is ben.llywelyn. Today I'm talking about the Lithuanian language, comparing it to the Welsh language and showing you how Welsh is connected to all the Indo-European languages. Hey, hit that subscribe button. If you've tuned into this channel before, you know what the Welsh language is, but for those of you who haven't, Welsh is spoken in Wales, a country of 3 million people, but under 1 million people speak Welsh. It's a Celtic language related to Irish and Breton. It is an Indo-European language, and that's what I want to get to you about today. The other language I'm talking about is Lithuanian. It is a Baltic language, distantly related to the Slavic languages, more closely related to Latvian. What's special about Lithuanian, and to a lesser extent Latvian, is how archaic it is and how conservative it is. It's the closest European language to the languages of India. It has some ancient traits, and many of them are also found in Welsh if you know where to look. And it can help you understand not just Welsh better, but all the Indo-European languages and how they relate to each other. There's not going to be a lot of common vocabulary, but there's more than you might think, given the sheer distance between these two languages, one on the edge of Russia and the other on the edge of the Atlantic. The word for leg in Welsh is coes, and in Lithuanian it's koia. That J makes a y sound, so you can see that these are quite similar in a way. It goes much deeper than that. The word for father in Welsh is tad, but the word for father in Lithuanian is tėvas. This may not look very similar, but if you look back to where Welsh came from and its sister language, Cornish, the word for father in Cornish is tas, with a long A, and tas and tėvas, they're not that dissimilar at all. And a lot of words in Welsh that end with D today used to end with S, and a lot of words in Lithuanian, a lot of words end with S, and these have common roots. There are a lot of consonant changes which connect different Indo-European languages like this. I want to show you a few of them which are common between Lithuanian and Welsh. The first one is the B and V change. You get this a lot between Latin languages and Celtic languages, like buch is cow in Welsh and it's vache in French. But in Lithuanian, you get words like vilkas. And compare this to Sanskrit, the literary Indian language. It's vrkas, practically the same word. A lack of a vowel there, but you get the meaning. Now, how on earth is this like blithe? There's an important grammatical feature I need to show you in Welsh first. There's something called the mutations. It means basically letters at the front of words change depending on what their context is grammatically in the sentence. I'm not going to go into that, don't worry, but just to know that C can become G and G can drop off entirely. The one in this case is B becomes a V sound and blithe becomes a vlythe, which is a lot like the Lithuanian word. And a lot of mutations conceal their Indo-European roots in Welsh. Another of the BV changes the word for to boil water. It's vertje in Lithuanian and it's berwi in Welsh. You can see how with a mutation, I verwi, to boil, it's got that V sound even though it's an F, and it really comes from the same Indo-European root. There's a lot similar here. What else do we have? Well, you have the word for old. In Lithuanian it's sena, and in Sanskrit it's sanas. An old man in Latin was senex. So in Welsh we get hen, and you're going to see a lot of these words that begin with S in either Latin or Lithuanian begin with H in Welsh, because at some point, probably around the 6th or 7th century, there was this change from the S sound at the beginning of words in Welsh to the H sound. And if you see this in something, it's a clue that it might be an old Indo-European S. And going back to the S, the Lithuanians love S's. They're everywhere. The word for man in Lithuanian has an S in it, vyras. And in Sanskrit, vyras. Very close. In Latin you have vir, and in Welsh you have gŵr. This may not seem very similar. It also means husband more than it does man, but if you can use it for man, people know what you mean. It used to mean man. That G at the beginning developed from a V sound, like many Welsh words. Wine, vino became gwin. Viro for truth became gwir. And you can see a lot of words that begin with V in Lithuanian have a G or gwa sound at the beginning in Welsh. I bet you can get what this word means in Lithuanian, dantos, a tooth. And in Welsh, there's another thing that conceals its connections. The word for teeth is daned, and that double N indicates that there used to either be a T or an S, because those two letters are connected and so often linked to either a Latin or farther eastern branch of the Indo-European languages. And a single tooth in Welsh is dant. You also get this plural in Lithuanian for tooth, dantis, which is that S again, and that double D for the plural in Welsh. It's often an indication that it used to be an S. In Cornish, these double Ds are S's in many cases. You get cognates across the European languages, and ones that hide mutations within the middle of the word, like aval is apple in Welsh. But in Lithuanian, it's obuolis. That B, that V sound that it has in Welsh, it used to be a B at some point. But Lithuanian is far more conservative and archaic in its construction. It's kept a lot of the old forms that changed, be it in Germanic Latin or Celtic languages. Llian is linen in Welsh, like laundry, and in Lithuanian it's linos. They love that S, don't they? As in all Indo-European languages, you're going to get cognates which are similar in the shape of the word but have a slightly different meaning. One of these is the Lithuanian word for deer, elnias, and an older Welsh word for a young deer is elain. These are clearly connected. You have linkages like this into the Slavic languages as well, which have words for deers which are connected to Welsh as well from the Indo-European root, but that's another story. Both of these languages have gender, masculine and feminine, which is common across almost all Indo-European languages, and some words are going to be the same gender, even though the word has changed drastically over time between them. Upe is a river in Lithuanian, I hope I pronounced that right, and it's feminine. It's the same gender in Welsh. Avon is feminine. You can see a faint connection there. There's two vowels around the P and the V sound. There's probably a distant link there, which probably carried on in the gender. Lithuanian is more like most other Indo-European languages in that it has a subject-verb-object word order. So, I ate the apple, whereas Welsh has a verb-subject-object word order. Ate I the apple. So it's a bit different there. Let me give you an example here. This is a lazy one is eating the bread. Tinginis valga duona. So the subject, the tinginis, the lazy one comes first. In Welsh, you can say buita diogen vara. A lazy one eats bread. And that verb comes first. Even in a longer periphrastic or common usage of Welsh, you have the auxiliary verbs which come first. That doesn't happen in Lithuanian, so that's a very marked difference, but one which would be more familiar to you if you're speaking English or French. Another huge difference between these two languages is that Welsh no longer has a case system. Lithuanian has this lovely table here. I'm not going to go into that, but you can just count how many endings there are depending upon what is going into what, who has what is being done to who, and so on. The nouns, verbs, and adjectives change. The endings, dependent on all of that. One thing where Welsh and Lithuanian are common is they both conjugate verbs. English doesn't do that so much, but almost every other Indo-European language does. Here are just the basic conjugations for a very similar word to be able to. In Welsh, that's gallu, and in Lithuanian, it's galėti. So here on the screen, I'll just put those two, the conjugations of that verb next to each other. You have galju, I can in Lithuanian, and galėjai, I can in Welsh. Gali in Lithuanian for you can, and gellidi in Welsh. That E at the end is very interesting because it's very similar across many Indo-European languages, and this is not an exception. There's a clear link there between Welsh and Lithuanian. The other one that's really similar between Welsh and Lithuanian in terms of conjugation is the ending for we. We can. Galime is it in Lithuanian, and galluni in Welsh. You could say gallun without the need for being more formal or answering a question in Welsh. And you can see how that N and that M would have been very similar. There's probably a common root there somewhere. These conjugations come from pronouns across the European languages. So here are those two side by side in Welsh and in Lithuanian. For I in Welsh, it's V, and ash in Lithuanian. The most interesting one perhaps is tu. For the singular version of you in Lithuanian, it's T in Welsh. And again, this singular U in Welsh and Lithuanian, it's common across the Indo-European languages. It's a common link that you find very frequently. Yi sin yi for him and her. That S usually denotes a masculine form, as we saw in father earlier on. And we drop it off and it means her. It's interesting that he is very cognate to ye, so there's a clear link between Welsh and Lithuanian there again. And these are very basic words. You're not going to get a lot when you have a conversation or hear one, but if you know how to identify that Indo-European root, you can get more than you would otherwise. The numbers across Indo-European languages are going to be very similar. So here are those numbers. You can see something right away before I have to explain it to you, that there's ones where there's two versions of the same number in several of these for both Welsh and Lithuanian, and that is that some numbers in Welsh have a feminine and a masculine form. You have this as well in Lithuanian, more commonly so, because it is more conservative. It holds a lot of the older, more archaic varieties. One that jumped out at me was the word for 5 in Lithuanian. Because as a Welsh speaker, for me it's pimp, and in Lithuanian it's penkie. That's really similar. That P at the beginning, it's a very close root to some Indian languages. 5 in Sanskrit was pancha. So you can see how that could have become penkie or pimp. The words which are going to be common between them are very, very basic. 2 boys and 2 girls. These are very basic, very old in both Welsh and Lithuanian. In Welsh, dau fachgen, 2 boys, and dwy ferch. In Lithuanian, it's du is 2, the masculine form. So you get du bernikai. I hope I pronounced that right. Dvi mergates. You might not see how the boy and the girl are very close to each other between Lithuanian and Welsh, but there's that mutation that's hiding again. So that fachgen comes from bachgen. There's a B there that's hiding. It changes after the word to. And the same thing for the girl. The verch comes from merch. So now that those two are revealed, see how close it is to Lithuanian. There are common traits between these as well, like suffixes and prefixes, which you add on to the ends and beginnings of words. Indo-European languages from Persian to English, Spanish, Russian, all share these traits, and Welsh is no different. It's going to have the ability to add on bits to create new meanings of, be it verbs, nouns, by compressing, by changing the meaning with accentuation. That's how Indo-European languages work. And if you know that, you can figure out Lithuanian faster than you would otherwise. Or Welsh. A lot of the words that are going to be similar between Lithuanian and Welsh go back, way back. And I mean early, to like the invention of the plow. So I plow in Lithuanian is arju. And the word for a plow in Welsh is ard. So here are both of those there written down for you. That's really similar, and that cannot be just a random coincidence. for a technological invention that was invented when these two had not quite fully branched off, before Welsh even formed, before Brythonic, before Baltic emerged and Slavic branched off of that. These are really old connections, but they're still there. I hope in this video you have seen that Welsh is not that distant from any other Indo-European language, be it English or Lithuanian. You can find common roots in them that you would not be able to find if it was something like Chinese or Arabic. So Welsh is not that strange. It's part of your family as an English speaker because you are part of the Indo-European. And if you speak Lithuanian, I hope it gives you some insight into how close Welsh is to you. And if you don't, I hope it gives you some insight into the Lithuanian language. Hey, diolch yn fawr am wylio, thank you much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.